I stood in that courtroom trying not to fall apart. Across the aisle, my ex-husband sat flanked by a polished attorney who looked like she charged more per hour than I earned in a week. Her voice sliced through the room like a scalpel. Your Honor, she can't provide a stable home. She's unemployed, under-resourced, and unable to maintain a basic standard of care. She didn't even look at me when she said it, just stared at her notes with a smirk, as if I were a case she'd already won. I clenched my jaw to keep from shaking. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. They didn't deserve to see me break. The judge didn't say anything right away, but the way he leaned back and nodded slowly told me everything. He was considering it. That maybe, just maybe, she was right. And in that breathless moment, when it felt like I was about to lose the only two people I had left in this world, my son Luca and my daughter Arya, my 7-year-old did something I'll never forget. He stood up from the bench beside me, tugged his little backpack off his shoulders, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Your Honor, he said clearly, can I show you something I found at Dad's house? The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned toward my son. Derek, the man I used to call my husband, shifted in his seat like he'd been slapped. His lawyer blinked and turned toward him, confused. I had no idea what Luca was holding. He hadn't told me anything about a letter. My stomach dropped, but I nodded. He looked at me for reassurance, then walked, small and steady, toward the judge, clutching that piece of paper like it was a shield. Before I ever sat in that courtroom, I was someone else. I used to laugh easily, work hard, and feel sure of myself. I had friends, a career I loved, and dreams I hadn't yet talked myself out of. Then I met Derek. He was charming, smooth in that way that makes you feel like the luckiest person in the room just for being noticed. At first, he was attentive, generous, full of ambition and plans. We got married quickly, too quickly, and I believed him when he said I didn't have to work anymore, that he'd take care of everything, and that raising our children would be my new job. You've done enough, he told me once. You deserve to rest. What I didn't realize at the time was how much I was giving up in exchange. My income, my voice, my independence. Piece by piece, I disappeared inside our marriage. When Arya was born, everything shifted. Derek came home late. He snapped at me over grocery receipts. If I bought a pack of diapers without checking if there was a sale first, I'd get the silent treatment for hours. When I mentioned maybe returning to work part-time, he'd say, "Why? We don't need your help. We need you to be a good mom." That was the beginning of the end. Eventually, he left. Not with a conversation. Not with warning. He drained our joint bank account, moved in with someone new, and filed for full custody of our kids. I had no money. No lawyer. No safety net. I went to the courthouse alone, waiting in line for hours at the free legal aid clinic just to ask how to respond to the papers he served me. I held a manila folder full of everything I had to prove I was still trying. Photos of my kids eating boxed mac and cheese on paper towels because our dishes were in the sink, rent receipts, a note from Luca's teacher praising his attendance. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like mildew. I worked 2 cleaning jobs under the table just to keep the lights on. We didn't have internet or cable. I washed our clothes in the bathtub with dollar store detergent. Sometimes the water heater didn't work, so I boiled water on the stove, mixing it in a bucket like it was the 1800s. And still my kids laughed. Arya sang to herself while I scrubbed her socks. Luca helped me fold the towels and counted coins with me at the grocery store. I never told anyone how bad it got. Not my friends. Not even my mother. She'd warned me about Derek early on. Told me he looked at people like investments. But back then, I thought love was supposed to feel like sacrifice. The day of the custody hearing, I wore a borrowed dress and a too-tight blazer from a neighbor who'd heard my story and offered it without asking questions. My shoes pinched, but I kept them on. I didn't walk into that courtroom with a legal team or a pile of exhibits. I walked in with my children, a folder of attendance records, and a letter from our landlord confirming I'd never missed rent. Derek was already there, smiling like it was a meeting instead of a reckoning. His lawyer was efficient, theatrical even. She talked about the best interests of the children, highlighting their client's stable income, beautiful home, private school brochures, and full-time nanny. Then she looked at me, straight through me, like I wasn't even there, and said, "Your Honor, Ms. Morrow has no verified income, no transportation, no confirmed job prospects. Her children wear used clothing, and her daughter's teacher reports skipped breakfasts. This is not neglect, Paresi, but poverty is a risk. Poverty is a risk." It echoed inside my chest. They were trying to paint me as dangerous because I was poor, because I didn't have the right kind of clothes or home or email signature. But I stayed quiet, because in court, silence looks stronger than rage. I wanted to scream, to ask, "Where were you when I sold my wedding ring to buy coats for my kids? Where were you when I went without meals, just to make sure there was enough cereal for breakfast?" But I kept my mouth shut, because I had been warned, don't cry too much. Don't interrupt. Don't show anger. The court wants mothers to be composed, not emotional. Firm, not passionate. So I sat there as they picked apart my life. Every moment of effort, every bath with boiled water, every patched jacket, every night I'd held my kids while they cried, reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet they didn't even glance at. Then, just when it felt like the ground beneath me had cracked open, I felt Luca tug my sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "can I say something to the judge?" I looked down, confused. My hands were cold. My heart was thudding. "What do you mean?" I asked. He opened his coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I found this in Dad's desk when I was looking for my tablet. It's about us." I couldn't breathe. I looked up at the judge. "Your Honor," I said, "my son would like to give you something. I don't know what it is, but I think it's important." The judge raised an eyebrow, then nodded. "Come forward, young man." Luca walked down the center aisle like he belonged there, like the weight of the truth was something he had the right to carry. He handed over the letter with both hands. The room was still. Even Derek shifted uncomfortably. His lawyer glanced over at him, her expression tight. The judge unfolded the paper, eyes scanning the page slowly. First, confusion. Then surprise. Then something harder, like he'd just seen the mask fall off. He looked up. "Mr. Morrow," he said, voice suddenly sharp, "would you like to explain this?" Derek didn't answer right away. He blinked like someone who'd just been splashed with ice water. The smug composure he'd carried all morning cracked at the edges. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His lawyer leaned over, whispering fast and low. Her fingers gripped her notepad so tightly. Her knuckles turned white. The judge, still holding the letter with both hands, looked back down at it and reread a few lines under his breath. Then he said it out loud. "To Derek Morrow from Elbecker CPA. Subject, strategic financial shielding. Divorce preparation." My pulse roared in my ears. The judge cleared his throat and continued, his voice sharper now. "This document outlines tactics for minimizing reported income, transferring assets to shell companies, and creating the appearance of financial stability in the event of a custody battle." I stared at Derek. He wasn't just trying to win custody. He had planned it, months in advance, down to the paperwork, the accounts, the lies. The judge's voice dropped slightly, like he knew he was about to say something no one could unhear. One sentence reads, and I quote, "Keep primary custody if possible, but at minimum ensure she has little legal footing for appeal by appearing financially superior and morally consistent." Silence. Actual, suffocating silence. No more shuffling papers. No more whispers. No more fake courtroom decorum. Just raw exposure. Derek's lawyer stood frozen. Even she looked blindsided. She turned to him, her lips moving but no sound coming out. He didn't meet her eyes. I couldn't move. I felt Arya's small hand wrap around mine under the table. She didn't know what was happening, not fully, but she felt the shift. I looked down at Luca. His eyes were wide, locked on the judge. He didn't understand the legal weight of that letter, but I could see something else flickering behind his gaze. Hope. The judge lowered the paper and leaned forward. His tone was deliberate now, unforgiving. "Mr. Morrow, this document demonstrates an intent to deceive the court and manipulate custody decisions through calculated misrepresentation of your finances. This is a violation of ethical conduct and a betrayal of the good faith expected in proceedings involving the welfare of children." Derek shot to his feet. "It wasn't used. It's outdated. That letter doesn't mean anything, he blurted, his voice too loud, too desperate. Sit down, Mr. Morrow, the judge snapped. He did. Just like that. The man who had orchestrated my downfall, who had smiled at my poverty like it was a punchline, looked like a student called out in front of the class. Small. Cornered. The judge turned to me. Ms. Morrow, were you aware of this letter before today? I shook my head. No, Your Honor. This is the first time I've seen or heard of it. And your son found it? Yes. I looked down at Luca, then back up. He told me just now. I had no idea. The judge looked at Luca, who stood up a little straighter. I was looking for my tablet, he said softly. I saw the paper in Dad's drawer. I didn't know what it was. But when I read it, I didn't want us to lose. I wanted to help. He looked at me, then added, I didn't want to get anyone in trouble. I just didn't want to live somewhere else. I wanted to stay with Mom. The courtroom shifted again, this time not in shock, but in emotion. Something unspoken passed between the judge and my son, a kind of understanding that didn't need words. You did the right thing, young man, the judge said, nodding slowly. He turned to Derek's lawyer. Ms. Dine, this hearing will be paused for formal investigation into Mr. Morrow's financial records. Until that review is complete, primary custody will remain with Ms. Morrow. The defendant's visitation is hereby suspended pending the outcome. I couldn't breathe. I had to blink several times, just to be sure I heard what I thought I did. Suspended. Paused. Custody with me. I exhaled hard and sank back into my seat. My knees were trembling beneath the table. Arya climbed into my lap, wrapping her little arms around my neck. I pulled her close and rested my cheek against her hair. Luca leaned against my side. Did I mess up? He whispered. I shook my head. No, baby. You saved us. He didn't smile, didn't cry. Just nodded once like he understood the weight of what he'd done, and knew exactly why it mattered. Derek didn't say a word. Neither did his lawyer. They packed their documents in silence. No rebuttal. No damage control. Just defeat. Cold, quiet, and total. After the judge left the bench and the bailiff dismissed the room, I didn't get up right away. I just sat there, arms around my kids, feeling the kind of relief that doesn't come easy. Like I'd finally been allowed to take a full breath after drowning for years. We walked out of that courthouse with nothing in our hands, but everything we needed. The air outside was cool and crisp. I zipped up Arya's coat and brushed Luca's hair from his forehead. He looked up at the sky and said, I think it's going to snow. I smiled for real this time. Maybe it is. A few days later, I got the call. The court had ordered a formal financial investigation into Derek's assets and income history. I was assigned a court-appointed investigator, Miss Trent, who came to our apartment wearing a gray blazer and warm eyes. She didn't treat me like a case or a sob story. She listened. She took notes. She never looked at my thrift store couch or second-hand curtains with judgment. She asked for permission to pull financial records, tax returns, business filings, everything. I said yes without hesitation. I had nothing to hide. Derek, on the other hand, did. Within a week, Miss Trent started finding things. Shell corporations in Delaware. Wire transfers to overseas banks. Undisclosed business interests tucked under different names. It was like watching a castle of lies crumble brick by brick. Every time she emailed me with an update, I felt something rebuild inside me. Confidence I thought I'd lost. Belief in my own instincts. Trust in the part of me that had always known something wasn't right. For years, Derek had gaslit me. Made me believe I was paranoid. Too emotional. Too soft. He made me doubt everything I saw. Everything I felt. But now, the numbers told the story he couldn't spin. He'd been hiding income. Hiding assets. Hiding the truth. And my son, my sweet, observant, brave little boy, was the one who pulled it into the light. While the investigation continued, I started to shift too. I went to therapy for the first time in my life. Not just because the court required it, but because I needed it. I needed to say things out loud. To name the years I'd spent afraid. The nights I cried in the bathroom so the kids wouldn't hear. The shame I carried for being poor, for being dependent, for not being able to make it look easy. My therapist told me something I'll never forget. Struggling doesn't make you weak. Surviving makes you strong. And I believed her. I started to see myself differently. I wasn't just a mom fighting to keep her kids. I was a woman clawing her way back to the surface with nothing but grit and love and a belief that the truth still mattered. I found a part-time job cleaning offices at night. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. I used the first paycheck to buy a pair of black flats that actually fit and a second-hand laptop. I signed up for free online courses in bookkeeping, something I'd always been good at but never thought could be more than a hobby. The kids began to thrive too. Arya made a new best friend at preschool and started singing more. Luca joined his school's art club. One afternoon, he brought home a drawing of a tree, its roots deep and thick, and underneath, in big capital letters, he'd written just one word: growing. That's what we were doing now. Not just surviving, growing. I didn't expect the final hearing to come so soon. One morning, I got the call. Our next court date was scheduled. Ms. Trent had submitted her findings. The court had reviewed Derek's financial activity and was ready to make a ruling. I stared at the calendar on the fridge, the date circled in red. It didn't feel real. After everything, it felt too sudden, too soon to hope. Still, I prepared. This time, I wouldn't walk into court with a borrowed outfit and a plastic folder. Thanks to a domestic support group, I had legal representation, a woman named Naomi who'd spent her entire career fighting for women like me. She met with me twice before the hearing. She went over the facts, coached me on how to stay calm, how to answer, how to breathe. You don't have to prove you're perfect, she told me. You just have to show the truth. It was the first time a professional had ever said those words to me like they believed them. When the day came, I dressed in a plain but neat black dress I'd bought secondhand. My heels were sturdy, not pretty, but I could walk in them without wobbling. My hair was clean, tied back. I looked in the mirror and saw someone new, someone who had clawed her way back from the edge and still stood. The courtroom felt colder this time, but not because of fear. There was something different in the air, an edge of tension that wasn't mine. Derek sat across the aisle again, but he didn't look like himself. No smugness, no smile, just stiff shoulders and a jaw set too tight. He had a new lawyer this time, someone quieter, someone who looked like they'd been pulled in last minute to stop the bleeding. Naomi sat beside me, calm and focused. They're nervous, she whispered. They know what's coming. When the judge entered, the room straightened. He didn't waste time. This court has reviewed the results of the financial investigation into Mr. Derek Morrow. He began, his voice firm but composed. The evidence demonstrates repeated instances of asset concealment, misrepresentation of income, and strategic attempts to manipulate legal proceedings for personal advantage. He looked directly at Derek. This behavior is not only ethically reprehensible, but it also represents a clear effort to interfere with the court's ability to make decisions in the best interest of the children. Derek's lawyer stood to object, but the judge raised a hand. Sit down. I'm not finished. My heart pounded. I gripped the side of my chair to keep my hands from shaking. The words were what I'd hoped for, but I still didn't feel safe. Not yet. The judge turned to me. Ms. Morrow, he said, this court recognizes your commitment to your children despite significant personal and financial hardship. You have provided stable care under difficult circumstances, without support, and without complaint. Your conduct has been consistent, responsible, and grounded in the welfare of your children. Then he said the words I'd barely let myself dream about. This court awards you full physical and legal custody of Luca and Arya Morrow. Mr. Morrow is ordered to pay retroactive child support and is subject to monitored visitation moving forward, pending further review. The gavel dropped. That was it. But my body didn't react. Not right away. It was like my brain hadn't caught up, like I was still holding my breath, waiting for someone to say it had all been a mistake. I looked at Luca and Arya beside me. Arya was sitting crisscross in her seat, doodling a sun in the margins of my notes. Luca was watching the judge, his eyes wide, blinking fast. His hand crept into mine under the table and squeezed. And finally, I let myself breathe. The sound of that gavel echoed in my bones. For so long, my life had felt like a series of moments barely survived, An eviction almost avoided, a dinner barely stretched, a meltdown nearly hidden. But this was different. This was survival with proof. Survival with recognition. When the judge stood and exited the courtroom, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Arya climbed into my lap, chattering about her drawing. Luca leaned against my shoulder. We didn't cheer. We didn't cry. We just sat there together. Whole. Still. Ours. Derek left the courtroom without a word. He didn't look at us. Not once. His lawyer followed closely behind, her face pale. Outside, the sky was soft with overcast light. No snow yet, but a breeze carried a chill. I helped Arya with her coat, and Luca held the door open for an elderly couple coming in behind us. That night, we had pancakes for dinner. No fancy celebration, just a little joy in our small apartment. I let the kids pour extra syrup, and we danced to old songs on the radio. Our kitchen was tiny, too small for all three of us to spin around without bumping into chairs, but it didn't matter. We laughed, we twirled, we were free. After they fell asleep, I found myself sitting on the floor, my back against the couch, staring out the window into the dark. For the first time in years, I felt still. Not stuck, not frozen, just still. A few hours later, I tiptoed into their room to check on them. Arya was curled up with her favorite stuffed fox. Luca's blanket had slipped off one side of the bed. I pulled it back up, tucking it around his shoulders. As I turned to go, I noticed something on the floor beside his bed, a sheet of notebook paper. I picked it up. It was a drawing of a house. Nothing fancy, just a roof, a door, 2 windows. But above the house, 3 stick figures stood together, holding hands. And next to it, in uneven capital letters, Luca had written, "Home is where MOM is." My throat tightened. I sat on the edge of the bed and just looked at it for a long time. That letter he found, hidden in Derek's drawer, had been more than a piece of paper. It had been a match, a lifeline, a lighthouse through the fog. He could have ignored it, could have said nothing, could have stuffed it deeper into the drawer and walked away. But he didn't. At 7 years old, my son had chosen truth over fear. He stood in a courtroom full of adults and told the truth when no one else would. I tucked the drawing into the pocket of my cardigan and turned off the light. The next morning, I made cinnamon toast and packed Arya's favorite markers in her bag. Luca sat at the table, sketching another picture, this one of a tree with thick roots. "Can I hang this one up?" he asked. "Of course," I said. Under the tree, he'd written just one word, growing. That's what we were doing now. All of us. It's been 6 months since that courtroom day, but I still think about it all the time. Not just the moment the judge ruled in my favor, or the way Derek's face changed when he realized his plan had collapsed. I think about the small things. The grip of Luca's hand on mine, Arya humming quietly beside me, the silence that settled over the room when truth finally spoke louder than wealth. People ask me now, how did I stay calm in that courtroom? How did I keep from falling apart? The truth is, I didn't. Not entirely. I just hid it well. Because when you're a mother and someone is trying to take your babies from you, the panic never really leaves your chest. But you bury it. You smile for your kids. You hold your spine straight even when your knees threaten to give out. Not because you're fearless, but because giving up was never on the table. The ruling gave me full custody. Derek was ordered to pay backdated child support, though I never counted on it arriving. He also lost visitation rights, temporarily at first, then more permanently as the investigation deepened. He tried to claw back some control, filed a motion to lower payments, then another one challenging the visitation restrictions. But both were denied. The court had seen enough. They had the evidence. His credibility was gone. He showed up for 3 of his monitored visitations. Then he stopped coming. He never gave a reason, never asked to reschedule, just disappeared from their lives like he'd flicked a switch. I didn't explain the details to the kids. I told them what they needed to hear. Your dad's not ready to be consistent. That's not your fault. You deserve people who show up and stay. They stopped asking after a while. Luca talks about the letter sometimes. One evening, we were curled up on the couch watching cartoons when he turned to me and asked, was I going to get in trouble for taking it? I looked him in the eye and said, "No, baby. You were brave. You did the right thing when it mattered most." He nodded and rested his head on my shoulder like he'd been carrying that question for weeks. And in that moment, I realized something painful and beautiful all at once. Children carry more than we think. They notice more than we admit. And sometimes, they act with more courage than the adults who should have protected them. Since the hearing, life hasn't been perfect. There are still days when the fridge looks sparse. Weeks when I stretch every grocery run as far as I can. I still buy clothes secondhand. I still budget down to the last cent. We say no to school trips sometimes. We skip fast food more often than not. But the fear, that relentless, suffocating fear of losing everything is gone. I go to therapy now. Not because I'm broken, but because I finally understand that healing needs space. I spent years convincing myself I didn't have time to talk. That survival was more important than reflection. But now I know better. Speaking it out loud, saying, "This happened, and it wasn't my fault," has changed something in me. I used to think that being poor made me a bad mother. That because I couldn't give my kids ballet classes or organic snacks or matching pajamas, I was failing them. But I see things differently now. I gave them safety, stability, love that didn't flinch, even when everything around us shook. I was there. Every bedtime, every skinned knee, every homework question I didn't fully understand but tried my best to answer. I was always there. And that counts for more than any spreadsheet ever could. A few months ago, I got hired part-time as an office assistant. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. It has health insurance. I come home sore some days, but proud. And at night, after the kids are asleep, I take online classes, working toward a bookkeeping certificate. Something solid. Something mine. I never thought I'd have the energy to build again. But piece by piece, I am. Arya's blossomed, too. Her preschool teacher says she's more confident, more talkative. She comes home every day with glitter in her hair and stories about her new best friend, Mila. Luca's art was chosen for a school bulletin board. He drew a big tree with thick roots that stretched across the paper. Underneath it, he'd written a word he likes using now. Growing. We're not rich. We're not flashy. But we're rooted. Some days still feel heavy, but most feel manageable. And some, like tonight, feel light. We sat at dinner laughing about a squirrel that chased Arya at recess. I burnt the toast, and Luca pretended to stage a protest. Afterward, we played cards on the floor. No screens. No noise. Just us. There's a photo on our fridge now, a new one. Me, Luca, and Arya at the park. I'm not wearing makeup. My hair's pulled back. But I'm smiling. A real smile. Not the kind you fake through exhaustion. I see it every morning when I reach for the milk, and it reminds me we made it. Not because of luck. Not because someone swooped in to save us. But because we told the truth. We held on. And when it came time, my son stood up in a courtroom and gave the judge a letter that knocked down everything false that had been stacked against us. People think justice only shows up with gavels and lawyers. But sometimes it arrives in a folded piece of paper held in a child's hand. Quiet, honest, brave. That's how everything changed. Not just legally, not just in custody papers, but in me. I stopped surviving that day, and I started living again. So if you're watching this and you've been through something similar, or if you're still in the thick of it, please know this. You're not alone. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to struggle. But don't let anyone make you believe that struggling means you're failing. If you're showing up for your kids, for yourself, in whatever way you can, you're doing more than enough. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own quiet strength, or made you believe that the truth still matters, take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, whether you're a parent, a survivor, or just someone who believes in love and resilience. Your voice matters here. I read every single one. And if you want more real stories about real people, fighting, healing, and growing, subscribe to this channel. We're building something here. One story at a time.